I recently learned that some of my favorite movie lines were not scripted. They were completely improvised. Famous lines like, "Leave the gun, take the cannoli" from The Godfather, "Here's Johnny" from The Shining, and "You talking to me" from Taxi Driver were ad-libbed and delivered off the cuff while the camera was rolling. How many other well-known movie lines were ad-libbed, I wondered. Fortunately, this is exactly the sort of high-level strategic question that heads of school are required to investigate. And given how relatively slow and calm the month of May is on our 3 campuses, I immediately cleared my calendar and went looking for Mr. Bellari, whose memory for movie trivia runs almost as deep as his memory for Pingry history. Indeed, there is an unconfirmed but highly credible rumor that OpenAI modeled ChatGPT off of his unique brain processing powers. We spent hours talking about our favorite movies, and by the end of our conversation, I had forgotten to eat lunch, had inadvertently purchased 2 belts and a toaster, was halfway through season 2 of The Office, and was staring at an angry group text from my wife to our children, which read, "Who just opened a Paramount Plus account? We already have 2. Seniors, I should mention that talking with Mr. Bellari is really code for surrendering to AI. And since you're never allowed to boo Mr. Bellari, especially during graduation, I'll now share what my lost weekend of internet research taught me. I discovered that some of the most quoted movie lines in history are ones that were never in the script. Instead, they were spontaneous, split-second decisions, like the punchline, "I'll have what she's having" in When Harry Met Sally, and the reminder that amplifiers go to 11 in This Is Spinal Tap. Lines as memorable as "I'm the king of the world" and "all right, all right, all right," all happened because someone was prepared enough and present enough to respond in the moment. Interestingly and thankfully, however, the highlight of my research was decidedly analog and old-fashioned. It was a Harrison Ford interview on NPR's Fresh Air, one where he was discussing his breakout role in Star Wars with Terry Gross, who has been interviewing people for over 50 years. They were analyzing the famous scene with Carrie Fisher, the moment when Princess Leia tells Han Solo that she loves him, and he responds with a cocky, "I know," instead of saying, "I love you too," which is what he was supposed to say. Ford explained that while director George Lucas wasn't happy that he didn't stick to the script, Ford believed strongly that his improvised reply was more in character and insisted they keep it in the movie. That unscripted line was unexpected. It got a laugh from the audience. And somehow, because of that laugh, the scene opened up emotionally and quickly became a fan favorite. At this point in the NPR interview, rather than dwelling on Ford's confident ad-lib or on his incredibly successful, still going strong 50-year movie career, the conversation shifted to his intense shyness growing up, on the many years of struggle and uncertainty that preceded and ultimately led to that iconic moment from Star Wars. While I knew Harrison Ford had worked on and off as a professional carpenter before landing that breakout role, what I didn't realize is that he was already 33 years old when filming began. And while it's tempting for me to think of Ford that he was born in a mini Indy wearing Indiana Jones's brown leather jacket and his signature fedora, I learned from this interview that he actually spent much of his teens and 20s completely unsure of himself and of his place in the world. He wasn't a student athlete or in student government. During his junior year at Ripon College in Wisconsin, he felt isolated and alone, like he was failing, and he wasn't exaggerating. He was expelled just 4 days before graduation, and he never received his college degree. So what was the turning point for Harrison Ford? When and how did that insecure and lost person become the star we all know, the person comfortable on Hollywood's biggest stages and screens? In his words, the transformation happened once he stopped judging people he didn't know and, quote, "found the company of people putting on plays, the people I once thought were misfits and geeks. Those people turned out to be my people, and I found a calling, an identity, a life in storytelling because of them." Just a few weeks ago, at our annual Achievement in the Arts Awards ceremony, talent agent David Bellari from the class of 1997 described a similar path, a career built on a willingness to adapt and ad-lib, and a desire to be surrounded by incredible collaborators and artists. In David's words, quote, Champion the artist, believe fiercely in them, in their potential, and help create the space needed for them to create. Harrison Ford called this experience finding your tribe, and where Ford was willing to spend years sweeping the floors and working as a carpenter on various sets just to be near his people, David Bellari was equally comfortable telling his parents that he was passing up law school to instead get up at 5 a.m. and spend his days in a Hollywood Starbucks for months in the hopes of sparking a conversation with the talent agents waiting to pick up their coffee every morning. Seniors, so many of our alumni guest speakers this year shared some version of that same lesson, that meaningful lives are rarely linear, and that the people beside us often shape the courage we find within ourselves. As you head off to college, I would argue that those two things, the willingness to adapt and improvise, and the habit of listening carefully to what other people have to say, will always be more important than mastering AI, picking the right major, or securing the best internship. While it makes sense for all of us to spend some time wondering how best to prompt Claude or how best to react to what Gemini has to say, a no less important question for us to consider is how we can best champion and support one another, how we can most effectively react in the moment, partnering with others to experience and to perhaps build something that lasts. There are key things that we cannot outsource or discover remotely. And as each of you defines for yourself what those are, I urge you to prioritize people and invest in relationships. Surround yourselves with people who challenge and champion you, who not only see your potential, but make you want to reach it. Success is not linear, easy, impersonal, or individual. Each generation of graduates feels the pressure to succeed, to achieve liftoff in life, even sooner than the previous class did. But life is ideally long, and a successful life and career require chance, creativity, and most importantly, community support. Careers don't happen overnight, and the trust and talent needed to go off script and feel comfortable reacting and leading in the moment can take years to build. At a time when emerging technology seemed to be expanding what's possible, while simultaneously narrowing humanity's role in its creation, I would encourage you to push back on that notion and look for ways to show up in person and find ways to connect with classmates and colleagues, strangers and family, as often as possible. To quote Roy Scheider's improvised advice in the movie Jaws, you're going to need a bigger boat. As tempting as it is to turn our decision-making powers over to AI and relax as the autopilot takes over, one Pingry parent recently shared a powerful reminder that has stayed with me. Quote, "I think the pilot analogy is the best one I have seen. You need to actually learn to fly a plane and how it works and the science behind weather. Otherwise, when something goes wrong with the automated systems or you're put under significant duress, you're toast." Fortunately, Pingry has trained each of you how to fly the plane very well. We've taught you to value the common good, to honor the rights of others, to strive for personal excellence alongside academic excellence. We've not only prepared you to work hard, but to consider how your actions impact others. But work at its best is not merely a private pursuit. It's one of the ways strangers become collaborators, and collaborators build things that none of them could have built alone. It's one of the ways we discover what we value, what we're willing to practice, and who we want to become. Though he's now decades into his film career and well past his own 50th high school reunion, the nearly 84-year-old Harrison Ford isn't interested in retiring anytime soon. Quote, "Without my work, I really wouldn't know what to do with myself. I really do love the work. It constantly changes, and the people change, and the mission and the opportunity change, and it just makes for an interesting way to live your life." We certainly live in interesting times, and you're fortunate to be surrounded by families, teachers, and friends who are rooting for you, whose interest in your happiness and success is as constant as the change that will define your personal and professional lives. As you take your next steps and some inevitable missteps, as you choose to sometimes follow the script and sometimes leave the script behind, may you always remember that the best stories are rarely written alone, and that Pingry will always be a part of your story. Congratulations to the members of the class of 2026. May the force be with you.